Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. In this episode today, we've got our first reaction episode of the year. The Kickoff Classic just happened, and to be honest, it kind of exceeded my expectations. There were some really good matches, some shockers. Obviously, Surge made their first grand final. It was honestly the first time they even got close to a grand final in their third year here in the CDL. It was a great weekend of matches. We've also got a little bit of news to talk about, but this episode's mostly going to be breaking down the Kickoff Classic and going over what we thought about the matches this weekend. So before we get into that, Kyle, how you doing today?
Oh man, I've had an eventful week here, especially the weekend. So I think last week I mentioned that I was, coming down with something. Turned out that tested positive for COVID. So hashtag thoughts and prayers. It turned out to just be like it. I honestly had colds in like high school and college that were worse than it. I am vaccinated though, so whatever that means. Apparently it reduces the severity of the infection when you get a breakthrough case, but so I've been kind of dealing with getting over that, just like nasal congestion and all that crap. And then Friday night I come home and I hear this like scratching noise in my ceiling. And turns out, we have like in part of our house, we have like a kind of like a recessed ceiling where like there's like tiles that come down. And then like, there's wiring and pipes above it. And I hear this like rhythmic, like, noise up there. And my worst fears came true, and we had at least one mouse up there. Probably driven in by our cold Midwest weather. Found a way to get into the house somehow. Bad news for him though. I laid a number of spring traps with peanut butter and managed to eliminate 3. Count that 3. 1, 2, 3 mice from our ceiling. Absolutely disgusting, and it totally instilled fear into my heart. Every time I had to take down the ceiling tile and look up to see my traps, that I would just see some dead mouse. But thankfully, it's been about 24 hours since our last confirmed fatality, and I can hopefully announce soon that I have taken care of the problem single-handedly. But like I said, it's been an eventful weekend between that, COVID, and watching CDL. I have not had a chance to, stop moving. So I'm excited to get into this episode because I was pleasantly surprised with the quality of the production and just everything that happened this weekend.
Esports Engine, baby, they're back involved and quality went up. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, you had a lot more eventful weekend than I did. I was basically like, you know what, this is my weekend to chill. I'm watching strictly NFL playoffs, which was also great this weekend, and I'm watching Call of Duty. So I was pretty much just glued to my screen for most of the weekend, taking in all that content. But it was a pretty eventful weekend. Like we both said, we were, I think, pleasantly surprised with the quality of not only like the matches this weekend, but also the production. Like it was a pretty decent step up for kind of a trial and error session for Esports Engine, because it was their first time producing a CDL event. Obviously, I mean, a lot of the people there have plenty of experience producing Call of Duty events, but haven't done it in a while. So that was nice to see. But we wanted to give also a shout out to all of you that are listening out there. If you guys enjoy this one, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We want to know your thoughts on the matches this past weekend, but also we want to shout you guys out because the support on the last podcast was absolutely insane. I didn't have a chance to go through and check like all channel records, but I'm pretty confident it's the most liked video and most viewed video, and potentially up there for the most comments on a video. It pretty much shattered all channel records. So I think both Kyle and I want to say thank you for that, because it was pretty crazy. Like obviously it's been a little bit slower in terms of the channel picking up some traction, because I mean, it's been a pretty dead time for Call of Duty and competitive Call of Duty. Let's be honest, over the last 3 or 4 months while we were waiting for the season to start. And this wasn't even like the official start of the season. This was just a preseason tournament that didn't even garner crazy views. But I mean, you guys absolutely killed it with the support on the last podcast. And I mean, stuff like that motivates us to keep going. And it was awesome to see, because I mean, seeing support like that and seeing all you guys have comments from a bunch of there was returning people that we've seen in the comments a lot, and then there was a lot of brand new people saying like, hey, this was a really awesome podcast, we enjoyed it. So we love all that feedback, and love to hear what you guys are thinking of the episode. So we really appreciate that. Before we get into it, I can let Kyle say anything if he wants to. Otherwise, we can dive right into the news.
Yeah, definitely. Didn't want to go without obviously giving a massive thank you to everyone that has tuned in and provided feedback to us and subscribed and liked and everything. We want to keep up the consistency on our end to kind of go off of the hype that the CDL is bringing, and we realize that that's a big draw for people to return and to get new listeners and viewers and stuff. So we're as motivated as we've ever been to continue the consistency and the quality. And so thank you all for sticking out with us, and to all those new folks that have come in, we thank you for checking us out. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I echo everything you said. It was pretty amazing because like the first night it got like the typical amount of views. It was like around 50 to 100, like it usually gets. And all of a sudden, like the next morning I woke up and it was like, wait, it has 500. Then the next day it was like, it has 1,000. Then leading up to the CDL like matches on that first Friday, it was like, it's at like 2K. And I was like, well, this is crazy. Like the support was unreal. So we really appreciate, like Kyle said, all the new people that have joined as well as all the returning listeners. We're just glad you guys are enjoying the content we're putting out, and we hope to keep improving it and continuing to put out content that we also, I think what's the coolest thing is you guys are hopefully enjoying it, and we're really enjoying making it, because now we're into that sweet spot of the year where we actually get to watch some real matches and talk about those, which is really one of the best things about doing this podcast, is actually just sitting down and talking about all the Call of Duty matches that happened. But before we get into those matches, we're going to talk a little bit of news, because we actually do have some pretty big news. We kind of touched on the first thing already, which was Esports Engine being back. It was announced that Esports Engine, Adam Epicella and his team, who are a lot of former MLG employees who have worked on Call of Duty for years and years in the past, are the official, tournament organizer, I think they called it, for the CDL. So they're going to be working behind the scenes, setting up all the tournaments and making sure all the production runs smoothly, as well as I think they'll probably be the ones setting up a lot of how the stadiums look for the different shows that aren't in the esports stadium in Texas. So I can't think of a negative for that. Obviously, Adam Epicella is one of like the COD fathers that built up the competitive scene with his tournament organization. And I've been to one of the tournaments now he organized, the Black Ops 4 Champs, and it was an absolutely amazing event. And I don't think you've ever heard anybody complain about any of his events. He does a fantastic job. And I think we noticed a little bit of an uptick in the production. Everything seemed to run pretty smooth this weekend for a kind of trial and error tournament. So I'm happy Esports Engine's back. I can't think of a negative thing to say about it.
Yeah, it was kind of wild that I swear to God they announced that Esports Engine was taking over the production like the day of or the night before or something. I was like, what the heck is going on? But they said that it was going to be, they were going to take it over right before the kickoff, and I was kind of skeptical. I was like, are they going to have time to like get all their, I assume they're bringing in their people and their infrastructure, equipment stuff. I don't really know exactly all the logistics of what Esports Engine specifically does. It looked like they were using a lot of the same graphics and stuff. So I think they're more or less just taking over the production, behind the scenes stuff, obviously. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been, maybe a little overcritical, or considering from what the CWL went to the CDL, and then everything with online COVID didn't help with boosting value for sure. But obviously, Adam Epicella and his team have a great proven track record of putting on these live events, and even the online stuff as well, which they'll be taking over for. So I'm excited to have him back. It seems like he's very passionate about the Call of Duty scene as well, and putting on the best product that they can. So yeah, I think that's a really positive piece of news.
Well, and it's like almost the double whammy of just like being perfect, because he knows how to run these tournaments. Really, whatever esport it is, he has so much experience. He knows how to run any tournament. But the big thing for me is, like you said, he has all that Call of Duty experience, and he also knows what the community wants, because he's been a member of the community for as long as almost anybody. So he has a good hand on the pulse of the community, as well as knowing how an online tournament, a LAN tournament, whatever it is, should look in terms of production and like the stage and how the event actually feels. Like, if anybody isn't sure because they're more of like a recent CDL fan, they just joined the Call of Duty scene within the CDL. Like you should know we're in good hands with Adam Epicella at the wheel, organizing all the tournaments and production, and everything. We're in very good hands. This is a very good thing for the CDL if you aren't too familiar with Esports Engine or his background. So there's absolutely everything to be excited about in terms of production, which at some points of the CDL, we've struggled. Sometimes there's been some big issues. Production has been kind of lackluster, and we have a lot of issues sometimes that it feels like we shouldn't have with how much of a budget they have now. But I'm sure Adam Epicella is going to be able to fix any of those issues. Other piece of news we have kind of around the production team as well, a negative about the production team. Maven and Merc are still out. They haven't officially signed a contract. We didn't see them this past weekend at the Kickoff Classic. It doesn't look like there's technically any official timetable for them to get this contract signed. Like they said, they want to get it done. Maven said he wants to cast Call of Duty for the rest of his life, and he wants to get it done. I believe Merc feels the same way, but they apparently, from what I saw, haven't even really had talks. And Maven said it could be because he maybe caused some issues with the higher ups or something by wanting to increase the production quality and maybe make some changes, but he's not really sure why they haven't talked. But I think if the CDL and the higher ups were watching the engagements on social media after Maven and Merc said they hadn't signed a contract and how many people were so upset by it, I think they'll hopefully realize how many people really want them to be involved and they'll make a change. But as of now, Maven and Merc not casting for the CDL, which any way you cut it is a massive L.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that once we get into these online matches and everything, it's going to be a lot more work on two casting teams as opposed to three.
Mm-hmm. Or they're going to pick up two new ones.
Right, and I mean, I think that not that I want Maven and Merc out, but there is a great confluence of casting talent out there that I wouldn't be opposed to them looking into on maybe like a part-time basis. I don't know, but obviously Maven and Merc are two stable casters and personalities in the scene. You know Arguably the 1A team of casters. I think Miles and Chance are pretty much right up there with them now. Obviously Miles is like the play-by-play caster of the year at Esports Awards, so obviously in my opinion he's taken over as like the guy I want to listen to the most. But obviously Maven and Merc bring a lot of expertise, and they're just such a well-oiled team. And whether this is further posturing on their part to get better contracts or whatever, it seems like from what Maven and Merc have both said that they're not even talking. They're not even currently in active talks with the CDL, so that's a little bit concerning. But at the same time, maybe they're just playing it really close to the vest, and they're not disclosing to their Twitch streams or to us what the true status is. But yeah, I'm definitely a little bit concerned as we're only another 10-11 days away from league matches starting. That obviously they weren't in the casting booth last year for the kickoff either. They held out until the league actually started. But yeah, I want to see them back. It's a big reason why we watch Call of Duty on stream, is to listen to the play-by-play casting. So yeah, big L if they don't come back.
Well, yeah, and it's not like we're saying like, oh my god, Maven and Merc are the best. Like we don't have any other good casters. Like Miles and Chance, like you said, are an absolutely fantastic duo. And Lando and Studdy, I think when they first started out, I wasn't a huge fan, but they've improved both of them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So they're by no means a bad duo either. And I'm sure, like you said, there are other good duos out there we can have. I mean, we've had them in the past, but like Maven and Merc are a staple. And whatever way, I honestly think it just comes down to personal preference between Miles and Chance and Maven and Merc. Both are fantastic. You can't go wrong with either. And they're both, like you said, 1A, 1B. They're both good enough to be lead casters that could cast every final. It just so happens that they're in the same esport, and both pairs are just that good. But like that's part of the strength of Call of Duty esports is we do have two duos that are that good that both could be casting every grand final, and we want to see them back because as much as there is so much talent out there, I mean, Maven and Merc are like they're a staple, like you said, to the Call of Duty scene. So we need them involved. So whenever they can get this contract done, please CDL get it done. Don't be stupid. Not signing those two to a contract is so stupid. I tweeted it. I was like, you don't even like need to know the specifics about the deal. You can basically just sign it down and make it a negotiable amount of money and like figure it out later. Like you just have to get them somehow signed and ready to go for this first couple events here, because we just can't be missing out on Maven and Merc being involved with CDL, because they're absolutely staples to the scene.
Yeah, and I mean, not to get too much into a rabbit hole on this, but like my concern is like, Miles also being the caster of the year, and he's, obviously had a lot more attention drawn to him since he, in the last year and a half or so. Like, is this setting a bad precedent that like CDL might be lowballing the casters and then they might just go elsewhere? Like, is it too wild to think that Miles could have like a courage situation where he just like up and leaves Call of Duty altogether? Yeah, I mean I just want the CDL to prioritize their personalities, along with a lot of other things that they should prioritize. But like I think having these like contract squabbles with casters doesn't set a good precedent.
Yeah, I mean, having the right casters is one of the few things the CDL has gotten right since its inception, and they can't screw that thing up either, because the casters and the talent and on-air talent is one of the main strengths, in my opinion, of the CDL. I think all the analysts that were on the desk, which shout out to all the new analysts too. A lot of like the new people, even Slack, he was great in the desk.
I thought Slack was incredible.
Alley Cat was also fantastic on the desk. I thought really everybody was great on the desk, like,
sure.
and the production. So like, to me, that's one of the strengths of the CDL is the production, whether it's the analyst desk or the commentators, or even like when they have Jess or they had Blaze on the desk. Jess is fantastic when she does like the after-match interviews. Blaze was fantastic this weekend. Like all those pieces of the CDL are like one of the main strengths of it. So I don't want to see that become a weakness now too, because there are plenty of other weaknesses that they need to address. So we don't need to add another one to that.
Exactly.
All right. Last piece of news before we jump into the matches from this weekend. Ranked play supposedly coming out in February. At this point, I think we don't even need to say supposedly, because it has been announced like by the CDL that's coming in February. The only way we say supposedly is if they lied to us. But since this one is from the official source, we can say it's coming in February until they tell us that it's delayed, because this wasn't like a leaker. This was actually the official CDL told us that. So I'm super pumped for that. After we are done recording this, actually, it's going to be a little chill time for me. I'm actually probably going to play a couple S&D GBs with some of my friends. I've been kind of getting into S&D, playing a little respawn and stuff lately, getting ready for ranked play, because I need to hit that master rank or whatever the top rank is. So I'll probably see some of you guys on the ranked streets, diamond and above, hopefully, if it's actually an elo system. But I'm super excited for ranked play, because I think I've talked about it on the podcast before. Really, the only Call of Duty game I haven't been able to play competitively is Modern Warfare, because I hated it so much, and there was no rank system. But like, pretty much you give me Call of Duty and you give me a decent rank system, I can play it for hours, because just love the game so much. So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad for all the people that have been day one Vanguard stands, or at least they've played from day one. I think out of protest, I'm gonna, it's probably a little bit late in the game cycle to get in and really like, learn, like level the weapons up, learn the rotations and stuff. As opposed to what I did in Cold War. I, played a little bit of you know, the league play there, and then played some rec league stuff with the CRL. So that was I don't know. I think I might look, and I think that's a indictment on the game not releasing with ranked, or having ranked within the first month or something. Like I think I don't blame myself at all for that decision. I just think it's like, it's already we're almost on the cusp of February, and like the league, and there's just a lot of other stuff going on that I don't know if I want to really like buy a game, learn it, and like get to a point where I would want to grind this like ranked playlist. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand. I hope it's really good. I hope it's an elo system for everyone that's invested time and money into this game. And I wish everyone well.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. Just if they give us an elo system, people will enjoy it, and it can maybe help bring some Call of Duty and rank play back to some of its glory days. Even though the game may not be the best, it's still fun to play when you're playing with a group. So hopefully it's an ELO system, and hopefully by February they mean like, in a week and a half when the CDL launches and not like February 28th, and they're just calling it February even though it's the last day. But yeah, it's time for us to jump into our bracket recap, which we can keep that short and sweet because I think it's safe to say, like a lot of people, our bracket was absolutely horrible. There's really no other way to put it. I mean, we really screwed that thing up. I mean, one of the only things we maybe got right is you wanted to push Boston through, but thankfully I kind of vetoed you and pushed New York through to the semifinal, which was like the one thing we got right. Obviously, we did not pick Faze to lose their first match. We didn't pick OpTic to lose their first match. Uh, it was pretty rough for the bracket predictions, but I don't think there was too many people that did too well. If you were one of those people that did really well in these predictions, shout out to you because I think there are very few people. I mean, I think some people probably pick OpTic to get upset by Thieves. Like that wasn't super uncommon, but I don't think many people picked anybody to upset Faze in the first match. I don't know that anybody had Surge in the grand finals. Toronto, I guess, in the grand finals. I feel like a lot of people didn't actually have Toronto going to the grand finals either because we know Toronto was really good, but we had heard so much negative about their lack of practice and stuff. And even they admitted after the matches that they didn't have much practice. So like a lot of people weren't expecting them to be in the finals or even win it. So I don't really have much else to say about our bracket besides we don't even need to go back through it because it is just so wrong that we can just say that we were horrible for our first showing of predictions.
Yeah, and I think we were talking a little bit about it throughout the weekend. Like, it's just kind of fluky with this, this game that still seems a little bit like in its, alpha beta stage almost with how it plays competitively, and then having it be a single elim tournament. So you obviously get like a phase result against Surge, and maybe people didn't see that coming. I think probably like 95% of the community wouldn't have seen that coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of obviously our bracket was dog crap, and you know hopefully we'll do better going forward with more of the teams making losers runs and stuff. But yeah, our predictions were not good.
No, not by any means. I mean, I would like to venture to say we're probably going to do better in the future as we get more of a grasp. Because also this weekend was so hard because this was the first time we had seen many teams play, so we were kind of just going based off names on paper. And as we know from Call of Duty, really any sport, you can put all the names in the paper you want, but I mean, if the team doesn't have chemistry or hasn't been getting good practice in and anything, they're probably not going to be as good as they look on paper. Or if they've been putting in extra work, maybe they're not going to be as bad as they look on paper. So, I mean, it was pretty much just going off the names and who looks better on paper this weekend. And a lot of the teams that looked better on paper, like Faze or OpTic, did not come out with the wins. So, I mean, what was it? 3 of the 4 teams that had buys, Minnesota, OpTic, and Faze, all lost their first match. So it's obviously not what you'd expect. Usually the teams that you would see getting buys are the teams you'd probably expect to win. And then the one that had a buy that won was the one that hasn't been practicing. So, I mean, everything was unpredictable this weekend, but we kind of want to get into the overarching storylines, kind of like the big storylines from this weekend, and then we'll go into our takeaways for each team after that. So obviously the big storyline of the weekend, I don't think anybody would argue that this was not the number one storyline, was Surge beating Faze, upsetting them after 3-0ing a London team, which that Surge London matchup was a lot of people's matchup to watch, including mine, of that first round, because it was like 2 teams that had a lot of question marks, but that we think had a lot of potential. And I feel like London showed flashes, but obviously Surge 3-0 them and look pretty good. Mac looked amazing. Sib and Pred looked amazing. And then they take down Faze, which is like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, why are Surge doing so well? And then they beat NYSL and make it to the grand finals. So your thoughts on that Surge run? I mean, it was pretty crazy. We were talking like it's hard to really knock a team for losing one single Elam match and getting sent home because it's so early. But when you see a team like Surge make this run and beat kind of a hot pick for like making a run London team and then beating 2 very good veteran teams like FaZe and New York, and also playing Toronto pretty tight in the finals, besides really that map 4, makes you have a little hope in the Surge. Pretty cool storyline for the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, winning your first match is always important. I wasn't too shocked that London fell there. However, still a good result nonetheless. And then obviously the win over Faze was just like totally unexpected, I guess. And then once they won that match, it was kind of like you kind of were pulling for them a little bit. So, they caught NYSL out as well, made the grand finals. I think that was their first Surges as a franchise. That was their first grand final ever, maybe even their first semifinal. To win a tournament or something. So, props to them. It seems like they're really flipping the script on their team history and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, big ups to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolutely insane storyline because I think like a lot of us we're talking about teams like London and Surge and even like Florida with some young players that we hadn't seen before and some new team makeups. We're like, hey, these teams have some potential to make some runs, to pull off some upsets. But I don't know if anybody expected instantly the Surge to make a run to grand finals. And granted, it's single elimination. It's the first tournament of the year. Maybe teams aren't pulling out all the stops. But I mean, teams are not just going out there and not trying. Like they may not pull out all their S&D strats to win a game because they don't want to reveal them. But teams are like, when you get on that stage as a competitor, even when you're playing like a random game of ranked play on Call of Duty, like you're not just like going out there just like not trying. Like you still want to win. Everybody's out there trying at least because you don't want to get embarrassed and destroyed, and you do want to create some momentum going into the year. So I was pretty impressed with Surge to be able to come out and make it all the way to the grand finals. They were pretty competitive in that grand finals too. Obviously, that map 4 on Berlin, they kind of got destroyed a little bit by Toronto, but overall, I was super impressed with Surge. The next storyline we want to talk about, kind of always going to be a storyline with whatever this team does. OpTic fell in their first match to Thieves. Now, we'll get into this a little bit when we kind of talk about our power rankings coming out of this event, but to me, it's really not that big of a deal. I think a lot of people were overreacting to OpTic losing. I mean, is it a good thing they lost? Definitely not. You never want to lose, even if it's a preseason tournament, but at the same time, they're playing a team like Thieves, who was honestly, if they don't completely choke map 4 hardpoint on Tuscan against Ultra, they should have been in the finals. A very good Thieves team, and like this Thieves team we know has a lot of talent. So it was a close 3-1 series where they take out OpTic. It's not the end of the world for them to lose this. OpTic obviously struggled. Really, everybody besides Dashy kind of got tucked a little bit. I mean, Shotzzy didn't play too bad. I'm looking at his numbers from the series. He was 81 and 82 overall for his KD, but they had some close maps. But I mean, I don't know. To me, this is just cool because it starts out the rivalry with we expected to be OpTic as the better team going into the year, but now we're questioning a little bit. Maybe Thieves is better since they beat them, but I mean, it's not too concerning to me. It seems like two very good teams that are probably going to trade blows this whole year because they're both top teams.
Yeah, definitely. I also think this is more like not to look too down on OpTic, but Thieves really came out with something to prove this weekend as a whole. And like we said, we'll get into that in our like big takeaways and stuff. But yeah, I think Thieves really surprised a lot of people. They were kind of down on a lot of people's like power rankings and stuff, and people maybe the entire community was more leaning towards OpTic just because this is a super team now and yada yada yada. But I think Thieves really showed that they can play as a really cohesive unit and beat anybody on their day. So I think I'm more optimistic about Thieves than I am down on OpTic after that match.
I would agree. It just honestly made me more excited for the season because I don't think there's any way that this OpTic team just ends up struggling so bad and suck. But I think we had more questions about these because we had heard their practice wasn't the best and they didn't look the greatest. So see them come out and beat OpTic just gets me more excited because I know OpTic's going to be a good team this year. And I know Thieves are going to be a good team, and I knew with that talent they wouldn't be bad. But seeing them come out and get a win and making a nice run makes me a little more hopeful that they could potentially be even better than we thought and really push that top 4 this year. So hopefully that continues. Hopefully OpTic bounces back because I think we all just want to see every team be super competitive this year. So we just have an awesome year where it's not like last year where we know our top 8 with 2 events left still. And it's looking like there's a decent chance that could happen because it seems like the league's going to be pretty competitive. Last storyline I want to talk about before we dive into each team's outlook after the Kickoff Classic is Ultra haven't lost a step. I mean, they defeated Surge 3-1 in the grand finals, also taking out Florida in their first match. They look very, very good. I don't really know that there's much else you can say. One of the teams that we were just talking positive about, LA Thieves, they beat them. Granted, they should have lost that map for. I mean, Thieves, all they had to do is sit in the hill and hide and not ego chow, and they win the map. But Thieves couldn't help themselves. They chowed out and didn't get the scrap time, and they lost. But Toronto looks impressive. Like they said after the match, they hadn't even really practiced that much, and they still looked this good. They said that they hadn't really practiced search, and they still look like they could be arguably the best team in the game, if not their top 2, top 3. So super impressed with Ultra. I tweeted about a little bit too. My boy Cammy, Mr. MVP, he looks like he didn't lose a step. Bance still looks to be a good leader that's putting up solid numbers. Kleenex, we saw him have a couple very bad maps, but he had those also maps where he just went off. So he looks to be the same Kleenex. He's going to drop a dud every once in a while, but he's also going to have those takeover maps and Insight. I mean, the dude looked like he was still icy in S&D, and I'm very excited about Ultra. I had some questions because of how bad their practice has supposedly been and how we've heard maybe they had some issues, but man, if they're looking this good again, like I said already, we are in for a good year of the CDL.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost I'm almost to the point where I'm asking for an apology from you for downplaying Ultra so hard in the last few weeks, saying that, Formal or Scump said they haven't been practicing and they're not looking good and stuff. And you almost made me buy into this whole narrative
Hey,
that
I had them as high as you on the power rankings.
that they weren't going to be good. And, maybe for me standing Boston in this thing, I'll take a mea culpa on that and say, I was wrong to, buy so high on Boston here. But maybe Ultra, they weren't looking good, and then all of a sudden they just put it together. But I think it takes a lot more than just putting it together. Stringing it along, because obviously they had to win 3 matches to win this thing. So I don't think that's a mistake by any means. And we saw this team just look formidable. And obviously they capitalized off of some mistakes on other teams' parts. But I definitely, think that this team is a stalwart, top end team still. Even despite having these supposed issues, whether that be not getting good practice in, or the whole Kleenex reportedly not signing a contract for a couple of weeks or whatever. But this team's deadly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure you had them at 3 in your initial power rankings, and I had them at 4. So we both said they were going to be top 4 teams, and it's no surprise. And the one team I put ahead of them was NYSL, just because I wanted to bet on Crim and Clay, which if I had to do it over again, I'd do it again. I'd still bet on Crim and Clay when it comes down to it, because they've never failed anybody that's really bet on them, especially when they team together. But I mean, yeah, Ultra is a top end team. I still think Ultra is a top end team. I think they're going to be top 4 pretty much the whole year, but I'm also not ready to completely say putting them at 3 or 4 and the power rankings was wrong, because I mean, this might sound dumb saying it, but I think if we come back at the end of the year, I think Ultra being around 3 to 4, I think they'll have their highs where they hit maybe 1, 2, but I think them being in the 3 to 4 range with how many good teams we have is not going to look crazy at the end of the year at all. I think they're a very good team, and we should be really optimistic. But I also think, I mean, this weekend they didn't play OpTic, they didn't play Faze, they didn't play NYSL, they didn't play a lot of the teams that we're also expecting to be up in the top. And they did beat, obviously, a good LA Thieves team that they really should have lost to in that series. And they beat a Surge team that, yeah, they were really hot, but we don't know that Surge is actually going to be a top team. So I am very high on Ultra, but I'm not ready to crown them or say they're going to be the top team this year, because I still think putting them around the 3 spot is a pretty solid spot for them, because I think they'll be a team that fluctuates from maybe a high of 1 down to maybe a low of 4 or 5 at some point. So I think that the top 4 range is good for them. All right. You ready to get into our kind of big picture takeaways from each team? I think we're going to go pretty much from the teams that were eliminated first, kind of looking at what their outlook is going into the rest of the year, how their weekend went, all the way up to Ultra at the top, who obviously won the event. So you good to get into that?
Yeah, let's dive into it.
All right. So we'll just go kind of down the row with our teams that were eliminated in the first round, with that first match being Florida versus LAG. LAG, obviously, the team that was eliminated in that first round, kind of unexpected, I would say. I would say it's not like a complete shock that they lost because it's not like they were some heavy favorite, but I feel like they were probably the team that a majority of people picked because a lot of people are very high on this team, thinking that they could be a top team this year if all the things go in the right places. But a lot of people were a little bit low on Mutineers because we had heard that, I don't know if the roles make sense in this team, but Mutineers came out and they showed out. I've got some of the numbers out here. Big Wake dropped to 1.43 in this series. It was going kind of crazy. It's not like Gorillas got slayed super heavy. They were all around a 0.9, which isn't the worst. But, I mean, Florida, they had 3 players above a 1 KD, and they looked really good. But this little segment here is about LAG. So kind of to talk about them, there was a lot of controversy after the match. They were talking about how many issues there were with the match, how they're basically playing a different game than they practice, which we've heard that from slasher teams before. But it does seem like you said earlier, this game's like an alpha or a beta right now, and a lot of this was just bug testing. And even Clay tweeted something about that, like this event was just like a bug testing event to make sure everything's all smoothed out before the actual season starts. So I don't have like too much to take away from this for LAG, although I will say I'm a little bit more cautious about them than I was coming into the year. I mean, I definitely had my concerns with how I think this team could blow up and, have some issues internally, but I'm a little bit more concerned to see them get beat down a little bit by Florida. But I still feel relatively confident in them. I think I might drop them down a couple spots in the power rankings from where we had them a few weeks ago before we saw any matches. But like, I'm not fully ready to panic on LAG, but I will say I'm a little bit more nervous about them now.
Yeah, I'm definitely a little bit nervous about this team, for sure. I think I jokingly messaged you, like, who said slasher teams have to start slow, and then all of a sudden, then they get, upended 3-1 in this series. Yeah, obviously, they didn't have a good day, didn't have a good series. I just, like we were talking about how this team might be good if all the roles the roles seem to make perfect sense. Like you have, a perfect flex and gunless and a main AR stalwart and slasher, and then Hook and Asim, who are like a, on paper a really good sub duo. But like we saw this game this weekend was just like, I don't know. I'm not gonna take too much stock away from LAG, but like I would be a little bit concerned that they might start too slow, if that's like even possible. Like I want to see them turn it around going into Major 1, at least show us that like they're making progress. Because like we know that the CDL points can start to compound and really shut some teams out quickly, especially if they're not progressing deep into weekends and into majors and stuff. Just because like, a win gets you points and a loss gets you none. So, my big picture takeaway is that, like I'm not really like I'm not gonna give up faith yet, but I want to see some improvement going forward.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I don't think there's any team you can just hit the panic button or hit the button that says they're an automatic top team this year after this weekend, but I definitely think you have to be a little bit more cautious if you were an LAG stand coming into the year. This team, obviously, like you said, still has the talent to turn around and be a top team, but it's a little bit scary with, how the excuses started flying. Granted, I do believe that there probably was a lot of issues and stuff, and this game is definitely not polished, but it's a little bit scary how that already started flying. It seems like they were already so frustrated because there are a lot of matches still to play, and they're already pretty frustrated with some results. Next team to be eliminated, my boys, London Royal Ravens. They went down 3-0 to Surge, which doesn't look as bad now because Surge made such a good run, but we see London go down 3-0. The maps were overall pretty close besides the control. They lost 250 to 203 in the Bocage, and then 6-4 on the Berlin Search and Destroy. No shock. My Dark Horse MVP candidate, Afro, was the only one on London that really played well in the KD department. He had a 1.1. Everybody else was around a 0.9 or a 0.8. Zero kind of struggled in this series. I mean, it's the same thing as, like I said, with LAG. It's a little bit of cause for concern that they got 3-0'd by Seattle, but then once we saw how good Seattle actually looked against a lot of top teams like Faze, it's a little bit less concerning. But I will say I saw some flashes. My outlook for London after this is maybe I'm a little bit more cautious about them because I really thought that they could have a good year. I still think they can have a good year, and I did say I think they might start slow, which might be an issue for them. But I think we saw a lot of the signs that we wanted to see. I think we saw flashes from Gizmo where he looked really, really good, which is intriguing because we didn't know too much about him coming into this. And I think it was also very, very encouraging that we saw Afro continue to fry. Because we obviously know that if this team's going to be good, Afro's got to be pretty much a top SMG, maybe an MVP candidate. But we saw flashes from Nasty and Gizmo where they looked like they have some extreme raw talent, which is good to see. And then Zero struggled, but I expect a guy like Zero to pick it up because we know he's always been a pretty steady, solid mainstay player in the CDL. So I still feel pretty good about London. Maybe I'm not as high as I think their high could be, but I still feel like they have pretty good potential to make a run at that 7-8 spot for champs, like I thought at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like you said, with only one match, it's hard because we don't really have anything to compare it to. Like, it's not like we're looking back and comparing their results over the span of a couple majors so far. It's honestly just one match and 3 maps. So you can look at numbers and hit the panic button because they got outslayed terribly. And they weren't really dropping numbers, and and also Surge just looked like unbelievable as well, especially in this first match too. Like, they really surprised a lot of people. My big takeaway again would be like you said, similar to LAG. Like, with a lot of these teams that might be closer to the bottom, they just can't let the the peloton get away from them, like a Tour de France reference. Like, they can't let the pack of like mid-tier teams get too far away. They've got to remain within touching distance, in order to fight for a playoff spot and to stay in that like consideration for top 8. And like you said, like, Afro only one on the team that was positive. He for the whole series he was only 64 and 58, so it just speaks to how fast the entire series went by. If your top Slayer only had 64 kills, he actually led the lobby in total kills for the for the entire match. Even the top Surge players only had 62 apiece. So, not a whole lot to take away. I'm not hitting the panic button on Ravens yet. I think they can still challenge for a top 8 spot, but, they're going to have to not start off like deadpan slow.
Yeah, for sure. They cannot have, obviously they can't have like they did last year stage 1 because they didn't win a match. So obviously that can't happen, but I will say, like you said, they can't start super slow, but they did have flashes of Afro looking extremely good, and Gizmo and Nasty also showed flashes. It's just going to come down to, can they make those flashes more consistent, and can Zero become more of that like steady player we know he can be, and that steady voice, and kind of take on almost like a Bance role for this team to compare it to another team, if he can become that vocal leader for them and really guide them. But I'm same thing as LAG. I'm slightly more worried than I was, but I am still not ready to just, after a one series against a team that seemed to be red hot this weekend, ready to say that London is just chalked or something by any means. Next team to be eliminated in that first round, Boston. Kind of a good showing from them, but maybe disappointing for some people because a lot of people were like, they were like the hot dark horse team people were picking to make a run to the semifinals or maybe greater. When you look at the overall series statistics, they were outslayed pretty heavily. Crim6 fried this series. He looked really good with the sub in hand as well. My boy Hydra, he fried the MVP pick. He was looking really good this weekend. He was hard carrying, maybe not in this match, but later on. But to focus on Boston, I was pretty impressed with them overall because we know, like, it doesn't really matter how much we've seen. We know a team with Crim and Clay as well as Hydra and Neptune. We know that's a good team that if you play them well, that's a good sign for you. And Boston played them extremely well, and they very easily could have won this series. They clutched that game 4 hardpoint. They clutched in that game 2 search. TJ was making some plays. That Tuscan search in that game 2, TJ was making some plays. He had like a 3-piece towards, I think, like round 10. That was huge for them to win. Obviously, it's pretty encouraging that they win a hardpoint as well as win a search. So they showed a little versatility in the game modes they could win. Capsidal had some highlight reel plays too, which it was kind of a question whether or not Capsidal was a guy, because a lot of people were like, this dude had no success in challengers. Why is he picked up? But he showed flashes. I feel like Nero showed some pretty good flashes. Methods was the steady main AR that we always expect him to be. And I think the big takeaway for me was Tej. Tej had some moments where he looked like Tej of World War II, where he was like a guy that could take over a map at times. Like, obviously his overall numbers in the series don't suggest that he did that, but like there were points in the search and destroys where we were like, I mean, even that last night where they got smoked 6-1, he was 7-6. The only player to even come close to positive on Boston, but like Tej showed some flashes. So to me, my outlook is very positive on Boston. I was questioning people's optimism about them because admittedly I didn't see them play too much, didn't watch a ton of their scrims, but I understand where the optimism is coming from now. I feel like I see a clear path to how this team could become a top 6, top 4 team if they really hit their peak. I feel like I saw a pathway to that with Methods being that mainstay AR, and Capsidal trying to be their superstar, and then TJ being that S&D superstar that we know he can be. And I feel like I saw a way that they can get towards the top. So I'm pretty optimistic about Boston going forward. And I'm excited because that adds another team that last year, like they're probably taking the spot of one of those bottom teams, considering they had like a scrap roster. And I feel like compared to some of the bottom teams we've had in the past, this is a team that could really make a run, and become a contending team.
Yeah, I hand up. I bought way too hard into, the scrim intel, having Boston as like their 4th team or whatever, their 3rd or 4th overall team in power rankings. I was like, oh my gosh, he knows something that I don't. This team is gonna fry. So hand up, I got that wrong, and but I'm still pretty optimistic about Boston's outlook for the season. Even though this is one match, they took New York, who we probably have in our top 4 teams, at least to being to a game 5, and played them pretty convincingly throughout. They did have a lopsided game 5, 6-1. Capsidal definitely showed flashes. I don't know if I'm really buying the TJ, like, whatever, like, I think he'll come into his own as we go forward. I don't think we saw the best of him yet. And still looking to see a little bit more out of Nero. I wasn't totally sold on him after, like we said, 1 match, 5 maps. I'm hoping that Boston as a team will prove me wrong in that regard, as being like maybe they know something that I don't, with why they picked up Nero and Capsidal. Capsidal definitely showed a little bit more to me this weekend. And I thought their listening was pretty good. I didn't think they were getting too hyper. It sounded like they've been working. They work well together, and obviously we've seen that through Zinni's stream as well. Like they've been streaming scrims and stuff, so we had a little bit of stuff to compare that to. But at the end of the day, they ran into a better team and got bounced in the first round. So, yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic about Boston going forward.
Yeah, I really think that this team will come down to, can Nero play consistently? Because I saw enough from Capsule that I believe that he can be a really good player. Obviously, that's not a guarantee by any means, but I really like the potential of him going forward. And I do think Nero has the potential, but like you said, I'm a little less sold on him. And TJ, I really think that, I mean, this is banking on a lot because we've seen TJ be pretty inconsistent really since World War II when he had his insane rookie year. I mean, if TJ can take over and search like we saw flashes of this weekend, this team has the potential to do anything because, as we know from the past, every single year there is a team that becomes a dominant search and destroy team, and they're always right towards the top of every tournament because when you can rely on your S&D, you're always in a series because there are so many teams that struggle at S&D. And when you can basically be a team that locks that mode down, you're always going to be competing for a top 4 finish. Kind of the team that did that last year was Ultra. They became dominant in search and destroy, and they almost hit that extra level because they also became a really, really, really good respawn team. So I'm definitely not saying Boston is going to be the level of Ultra, but I'm thinking that if TJ can hit that search and destroy prowess that we've seen in the past, this team could have the potential to be that team that we saw every year. I've used the reference a million times in this podcast, but Elevate from Black Ops 3 is a team that comes to mind where they were definitely not one of the top respawn teams. You could even say they were maybe below average at respawn, but they literally guaranteed like every search that if they found a way to steal one respawn and get to a game 5, they were probably winning that at like an 80% rate because of how good they were at search. I can see a path where Boston could become a team like that, where they could become a very, very good search team, and they just got to be a team that can sneak a respawn off you. So guys like Capsule and TJ are going to have to pop off in those respawns to get those secured. But overall, I think both of us are pretty optimistic about Boston going forward. We're not fully sold on them, but we like their chances to be a pretty good contending team. All right, last team to be bounced in the first round. Not a shocker on this one that they were bounced. We were kind of expecting it, but I don't know, you might disagree with me, or I don't want to speak for you, but I think I was kind of overall happy with the way Paris performed, I guess, if that makes sense. They lost the map 1, decently close on Gavutu, then they kind of got blown out in that game 2 search. They won the control and then kind of got blown out in the final map, but like overall, they weren't like absolutely destroyed or anything. Like they heavily outslayed Thieves on the first map, actually, the first hard point, and still lost it. But I feel like overall, like this was a decent showing from Paris. Like I still think they probably end up being a bottom team, like a bottom 2 or 3 team. But I think that, I mean, this is kind of a like backhanded compliment in a way, but I feel like they're going to be more competitive than they have been in the past. When, I mean, they've been the bottom team pretty much every year, but they've been by far the bottom. I feel like they're still going to be bottom 2 or 3, but they're not going to be like a shoe-in win. Like I feel like they'll make their series more competitive than in the past, and I think there's chances that we could see them maybe win a round or 2 in some tournaments and make a little bit of noise and pull off some upsets more than they had a chance to last year.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. Surprisingly, Paris didn't fold. I mean, this is a team that has 4, quote unquote veteran players they've been around for a while. I don't know, as much as I've been rooting for his comeback, I think, John might be the weak link on this team.
Don't break my heart.
I don't know. I mean, just looking at, obviously it's reacting to numbers isn't, 100% of the issue, but like he's just like consistently not dropping the amount of damage that the rest of his team is. Obviously, like team shotting and stuff is, always a big part of, these arcade shooters and stuff, like, getting in your shots on people to eliminate people from the map and stuff and respawn. I don't know, maybe they need to change the play style, because I think John, on a historical basis can be a very solid SMG, but would they move away from him and get another person, if it's just not working? I don't know. That's a question for another day. That's not my big takeaway. My big takeaway is that if this Paris team can continue and improve, progressively improve over the span of the season, I think that they could challenge to not be the worst team in the league. I don't think that they're going to be, sadly, anywhere near the discussion for getting the 8 spot. But in the history of Paris, I think that, challenging to not be the laughing stock of the league, sadly, would be an improvement for them. So I think that they showed that they definitely have the ability to do that. Whether they have the whether they have the ability to grow throughout the game, because we know a lot of other teams are going to get a lot better as well. So I'm just hoping that, maybe Paris can show us something that we haven't seen from them yet, and they can get better as the game cycle continues.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I guess my closing question I want to propose to you as we leave Paris and go on to the next round of teams is, I would say, in my opinion, Paris are going to be like, compared to the other 12th place teams, which I technically think isn't them for both years. I feel like one year I think they were like 11th in Modern Warfare, and like Surge was 12 or something. I don't remember fully, but I feel like in terms of, if you go back and look at the last 2 12th place teams, I feel like they're going to be closer to the level of the 8th team than the past 2 12th place teams. I mean, I know that might be kind of confusing, but I feel like they're going to be more competitive in comparison to the last two bottom teams. So that's something that makes the league a little more exciting when that 12th team maybe isn't a free win. And one thing I will say, I always talk about like a team that's good in search. This is another team that I feel like has potential to be very annoying, even though they're a bottom team. It might be impossible to, well, I don't want to say impossible to 3-0 because like when they play a team like Faze or something, they're going to get 3-0'd. It's bound to happen. Everybody's going to get 3-0'd this year. But I feel like Paris is going to be a very hard out, even if they're a bottom team, because they have a guy like Decimate who's always been a great search player. And Fellow as well is an absolutely fantastic search player. And if the snipe stays in, I know you talked about John struggling, but John he showed some flashes with the sniper this weekend in their search and destroy game. And also we know from history, John has always been a top sniper in every game. So I feel like in search and destroy, they do have a chance with Decimate and Fellow being S&D stars coming from the S&D community. Temp, I mean, the guy has crazy gun skill. He'll eco-chal everything. He'll be that random player to pop off for 3 pieces in search, which we saw flashes of in the respawns this weekend. And then if John can be a good sniper with snipers in the game, I feel like this team does have potential to be a good search and destroy team that will struggle and respawn, but can maybe take one off you and can force a lot of series to go 3-1, 3-2, and sneak out some series. So I don't know. I think they're going to be the most competitive, maybe bottom team we've seen in terms of like being the 12th team. They're not going to be as free of a win as that 12th team usually is, which is exciting for the CDL because if the bottom is better, that means the league's more competitive and it's more fun to watch.
Yeah, my closing argument would be, or my closing point would be also like we say that if they're more competitive, that's good, but like you don't get extra CDL points for losing 3-2 as opposed to losing 3-0. So until that quote unquote being competitive is recognized into CDL points, I think that it's still gonna not bode too well for teams like Paris, unfortunately. So, maybe they can eke out like a series win here or there, but until they're consistently taking, playing like 500 baseball in these like qualifying matches and stuff, we're not gonna see them, be much more than a bottom 2 to 3 team at best, in my opinion. So sad, but we can move on if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm excited for the CDL overall. If they're the bottom team, I feel like I'm a little bit more intrigued to watch them than like every time a Surge match would come on in the past couple of years, I was like, God, I just don't want to watch this. Where now, I mean, I'm kind of intrigued to see what Paris looks like, at least for this first part of the year until maybe they start losing all their matches. Then I get bored of them. But I'm a little bit intrigued by their team.
Yeah, very true.
All right, next team to lose. I don't think we either of us or anybody listening out there expected this to be a team that we talk about losing their first match, but Atlanta Faze. To be honest with you, I just really don't even want to spend much time on this team. I think I'd rather save some time and get into more other points because Cellium played really well in the series. They struggled overall. They lost to a red hot Surge team. I think more of the storyline of this was Pred's coming out party. He dropped 103 kills, the most damage in the lobby with 12K, had a 1.18. The dude looked unreal. Obviously, Faze comes out, kind of dominates the Bocage hardpoint, and then Surge rattles off 3 straight maps. I just don't really have too much to say about Faze because I think anybody that is panicking about Faze is an absolute moron if you're panicking about Faze. I think we saw them lose last year in the Kickoff Classic. They came out, they lost a series, so I think it's more credit to Surge for coming out ready to play and being able to get this win than it is a detriment to Faze. I'm pretty ready to move on to the next team eliminated if you don't have too much to say about them. But obviously, we'll let you get your words in about Faze if you have anything major. But to me, it's like, okay, Faze lost the first match. They did it last year. We saw what happened. My level of concern for them is 0 until I see them actually start to struggle in real matches, which I don't think they're going to do.
My gosh, Ryan, how can you not be hitting? How can you not be hitting the full blown panic button on Faze? They looked terrible.
Yeah.
I think this team is chalked. They need to fire Crowder and replace all 4 players. No, like you said, obviously this team is presumed innocent until proven guilty. And I think that, like you said, this is more like we said, an indictment on Surge being a better team than we gave them credit for. I saw somewhere on Twitter, it's like, it's well, I'll save that for when we get to Surge. This is about Faze. I think that they're going to be just fine. Wait till we start playing matches that are for CDL points, and then we'll see who's winning and who's losing. And then, if we see a consistent trend where Faze are losing, then we can start to have that conversation. I don't think that day is coming. I think Faze is, they're as, fine as they're ever going to be. Did they have the result they wanted to? No. But at the end of the day, this is a single elim kickoff tournament that's not worth CDL points. And obviously, Faze being the consensus number one team, they're going to get flamed for losing. And
people are going to bring their best against them.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's, justified to be hypercritical of Faze, so we can go ahead and move on.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say on kind of a funny note is I was just looking through the numbers, and I want to know the last time that Simp in back-to-back maps in the control, he had a 0.59, and in the final hardpoint, he went -10 with a 0.64, and he was the lowest KD when you include both teams. So anybody that thinks that that's going to continue where Simp drops, he technically had 100 more damage than Mac, so he was the second lowest damage in the entire lobby. But if anybody thinks that the trend of Simp having the least kills, he had one more than accuracy, I guess. But if anybody thinks the trend of Simp getting the least kills, the most deaths, the lowest KD, the least damage is going to continue, I got something to sell you. I mean, that's just not gonna continue. Simp is not gonna be the lowest statistical player in every category in the lobby. Like I noticed that in that map 4, I was like, Simp is kind of getting fried right now, and I was like, well, that's never gonna happen again. He's gonna see that he got fried in one match, and he's gonna come over, and by the time next week rolls around, we get our league matches going, he's gonna be the best player in the game, probably, or close to it. Like, Simp is not going to continue to struggle like that. I want to know the last time he actually went negative in a series, or I mean, I guess if he did, I want to know the last time he had like less than a 0.98 in a series or something. Like, Simp is not going to continue to have a struggle series like he did. The guy is unreal. He's arguably the greatest talent we've ever seen. It's not going to happen. So, like you said, panic level on Faze is 0. Next team, Florida Mutineers. They get eliminated 3-1 by the eventual champions, Toronto Ultra. Another team that I don't know I have too much to say because I really want to get into these top teams. I think they deserve more shine for getting towards the top, but I feel like they lost to a team that's superior to them. I think there's no question that Ultra is the superior team, but I will say the showing from Florida this weekend left me with a little bit of hope for the team. I was admittedly like almost as low on Florida as like any team really, and I think you'll see in my power rankings, I'm still have them pretty low in comparison to like how I feel about them as compared to other teams. But to see them win a match and not look terrible and beat a team that a lot of people were high on in LAG coming in and then losing to Toronto, but playing them relatively competitively, I feel like I'm pretty okay with the way Florida played. I feel like I had them as a bottom team coming into this event, and I'm left with the thought that I still think they're more closer to like 8 than they are to cracking the top 4, but I do feel all right about that. I don't think the roles are absolutely terrible. Big Wake looked pretty good this weekend. They looked like a very good search team, which, like I've said a couple times already, is important to me. And I don't know. I overall feel okay about Florida's chances to compete for that 8 spot, but I don't really see them getting much higher than like that 7 or 8 spot.
Yeah, I think my takeaway for Florida is kind of a mixed bag. I definitely am excited about the 4 players they have. I think Dave really kind of showed up this weekend. At least he proved that he's not like a burger on the map, because obviously being the new player to the CDL, and maybe not a lot of people knowing a lot about him. He held his own. Had a couple moments here. Wake looked good. I think Skies had some moments too with the sub, especially. Some people were wondering if he could take on the that like flex SMG role, well enough. And then Vivid still he leaves a little bit to be desired just from this weekend though. But yeah, I agree that we'll probably see them hanging around the cutoff point for champs CDL points at the end of the regular season. Yeah, maybe I'm a little bit I don't know, a little bit optimistic for the future for them. So yeah.
Yeah, it's never a bad thing when a team comes in towards the bottom of a lot of people's lists and they win a match and look overall pretty good. So Yeah, pretty optimistic about Florida going forward. Don't know that I see them having a super high ceiling, but I don't also see them being as low as I potentially thought they could be. So I'm overall pretty excited about their chances as compared to where my expectations were coming into the weekend. However, this next team, I think I might just let you have the floor for them because they are your team, and they struggled in this match. They got 3-0'd. They were overall like pretty competitive in the first hardpoint. Minnesota Rocker. Major Maniac had a pretty darn good series, which I think a lot of people would say he's maybe the X factor of this team because I think a lot of people know that guys like Attach, Standy, and even Priest are going to be pretty consistent with their excellence. But I mean, they this map won. I'm actually looking through the stats. This was the match that everybody was the map that everybody was actually talking about. This Bocage hardpoint where Subliners won 250 to 242. If you look at the numbers and didn't see the scoreline, you would think that Minnesota won 250 to 150 or something, because this is where the untraded kills things come in. Minnesota like fried them. I believe they outslayed them by like 22 kills or something, but they still lost the map. So I mean, the encouraging thing, I guess, at least Minnesota's kind of frying a team like New York with a lot of talent, but they still find a way to lose the map, which might be even more concerning. They get 3-0 in control. They lose Search, which is probably going to be their calling card and their top game mode this year for this Minnesota team. So I'm a little bit concerned about them, but like we said in our preseason predictions and stuff, we both expected Minnesota to probably start slow and pick things up as the year went on. So I'm not shocked by this result. Makes me a little nervous, but I still expect this team to come around, find their way as Search and Destroy being their game mode, and then figuring everything else out and coming along. But a little bit concerning that they were outslaying New York that heavily and still finding ways to lose the map.
Yeah, that was I think I messaged you. I was like, FML, this is like, well, what are we doing here with outslaying by 20 plus kills and still losing? But it is a Bocage. It's just a head bashing fiesta. If you win a rotation, you can pretty much die a bunch of times and still win or find a way to hold the hill. With how mixy that map is, especially. And like we said, it's early days. It does make me a little bit concerned, though. I would have liked to see them at least take a map from New York. I mean, we can say that New York is playing really well right now, and then use that as an excuse. But like, I want to see Rocker pick it up, because just with the amount of teams that are ahead of them, I think that they could kind of fall into that, like, we don't want to fall too far behind the pack, whatever the pace setter at the midfield is for, CDL points and stuff. Like, let's not lose sight of them, let's not fall too far back to like the 7-8, but let's keep it within touching distance of like the 4, 5, 6 teams. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. I mean, obviously disappointed to not, have them win a single map, and but I don't think they made an ass of themselves either. They say what you want about the first map. It was really entertaining when you have a hard point come down to the wire like that. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm not sounding alarm bells, but at the same time, I'm not too thrilled either. So yeah, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of, I hate to say it, but almost what we expected out of Minnesota to start the year. We expected them to start slow and then eventually pick it up. So I agree. Not too concerned with Minnesota. Our next team, however, though, they're always going to be the team that has the most extreme reactions. They're always going to be, when they win, it's going to be they're the best team in the world. And when they lose, they're somehow the worst team in the world because their fan base is the most vocal. And that is OpTic Texas. I honestly, as hard as it is, because they are the team that everybody wants to hear you talk about, I really don't want to spend that much time on them. I want to move on and talk about our other teams that were finishing. I mean, the teams that finished in the next round in the top 4, because I think it's the same boat as Faze, but to a lesser degree. Obviously, we have more faith in Faze that they're going to turn things around and be an amazing team, because frankly, Faze has shown better results than this OpTic team in the past year or even 2 years, if you want to go back to Modern Warfare, even though the teams are pretty different. But I think there is no reason to panic for OpTic. 100 Thieves, LA Thieves, whatever it is, since they came into Call of Duty and Black Ops 4, have just quite frankly had OpTic's number. They seem to always beat them, but the matches are always close. This match was overall relatively tight as well. First hardpoint was close. The search was close. OpTic takes the control, and then it's a 12-point game in the final hard point. I think Dashy played a fantastic series for OpTic, which is what we'd expect to see. And Shotzi was at a 0.99. Scump had a 0.83. Illy had a 0.95. I feel like those numbers are going to go up a little bit. I don't think Shotzi's going to be going negative in many series this year. I don't think Scump's going to drop a lot of 0.8s. I think those numbers are going to get better. Scump had the least damage in the lobby. Regardless of what you think of Scump and if he's as good or not as he was previously in his career, he's not going to be the lowest damage in the lobby very often. He's not going to have the worst KD in the lobby. Although Envoy had a 0.7 on the other side, which was the worst. But Scump's not going to play that bad. I think Shotzi's going to improve and get more towards that MVP level. I don't know that Dashy's going to play this well every series, but I think he'll be somewhere around as well as he played. I don't think it's time to panic at all for OpTic. I think they lost to a team in LA Thieves that is also a very good team that is kind of on that same level as OpTic. So to me, same thing as Faze, but maybe to a little lesser degree, maybe a little bit more worry for OpTic because they aren't Faze, and we know that they have struggled in the past, but I still think OpTic is ready and locked and loaded to be a top 4 team. So I think they just happen to play a team that is also very good, and they got the best of them on this day.
Yeah, I just hope that they don't lose composure after kind of flaming out of the Kickoff Classic. I think Dashy really showed some positive upsides with just pure raw slaying talent. He was positive 18 kills on the series. And I think a lot of the question marks came around like, oh, is Dashy gonna be a good AR, or is he gonna bumble around and just like mess it up like he did in the last few years and stuff. But definitely with a game that's as quote unquote mixy, however you want to define that. Dashy can kind of get involved and do some like off-brand stuff for a main AR and get away with it. And he kind of showed that. He had some he had some multi kills from what I remember in the match. Definitely getting like up close and personal with the enemy team, not playing like the super passive AR role necessarily. I just think like we said, LA Thieves really had their number this weekend. They had a lot of teams' numbers this weekend, for that matter, and really showed up and played really well. And they just won the important gunfights when they mattered. And yeah, so not sounding the alarm on OpTic Texas. I think that they're still locked and loaded, like you said, to be a top team. I'm excited to see what they bring going into Major 1, because we know that OpTic likes to start out hot, and I think even more so now that they lost the Kickoff Classic, or that they didn't play up to their expectations, they're going to want to come out with like fire in their belly and play really well in Major 1. And we know the historic arc with OpTic is to start hot and then kind of like have a reverse like a reverse bell curve and kind of just like fall away in the mid and then kind of come back at the end. But so yeah, look for OpTic Texas to come out hot in Major 1. Maybe you heard it here first. I'm not gonna put my stamp on it, but wouldn't shock me whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's at all time to sound the alarms, which is how I'm gonna be for most teams, because this is just such a early event and so many teams are still learning the game. This next team is New York Subliners. They were eliminated by Surge. They overall kind of did get fried in this series, which is a little bit concerning. Hydra was the only one that looked like he was really shooting back at most times in this series. Mac was an absolute animal in this series, and really Mac was pretty much an animal this whole weekend. He looked very, very good. But New York loses to Surge 3-1, falls out in the top 4. I mean, I don't know. It's the same thing as we said for the last couple teams with New York. They lose to Surge, which is maybe not who you'd expect them to lose to, but man, Surge was on a mission this weekend. Neptune really, really struggled in this one. Clay struggled as well. Hydra, like I said, was like the one highlight of their team. He actually still played pretty well. But it's the same thing for New York. It's Clay and Crim. Hydra looks really good. The only thing that we really have a question with them is, can Neptune step up, because he really struggled. But like, do we really expect Neptune to continue to struggle that bad? Maybe he won't be a top sub this year, but I think Hydra is only going to keep getting better, and he looked pretty good. I don't expect Crim and Clay to struggle as badly as they did in this series, and I think Neptune's going to pick it up. So I'm still pretty confident that New York is going to be in that top 6 or better range that we expected them to be. It's just not going to happen where a Clay and Crim team are towards the bottom. Hydra looked like he could be an MVP this weekend, though, at times with the flashes he showed. So as long as the rest of the team can rally around him and be somewhat consistent, still think that this New York team is ready to go and be a top team and contend for some top 4s and maybe some championships this year.
Yeah, I like we said, New York probably they're a top 4 team, and they finished T4. So I don't think that this is too far off from where you'd expect them to finish. Especially in just a kickoff classic. I just more so, like you said, it's Seattle. Seattle really came to play. They came to prove people wrong. And yeah, they did. New York did get flamed the series, but not like we said with other teams. If we're giving other teams a pass and we're not sounding the alarms, we can't sound the alarm on New York here for just having a dud of a match. It just shows how competitive the league is. I don't think New York went into this. I don't think it's a good mindset to go into any competitive match thinking like, oh, this doesn't matter, so we're just gonna kind of meme and like, just mess around or whatever. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to what New York brings going forward. Like you said, Neptune didn't really have a great match, but I think that the team believes in him. If this team is going to be really good, he's going to have to, pull his own weight with Hydra, and then obviously Crim and Clay, you can't bet against them. I think this team is fine. I'm not worried that they had a bad match against Surge, and I think they're set up really well to be really consistent throughout the season.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. There's just never a time where I'm ever going to hit the panic button on a Crim and Clay team until we really see them struggle or they have some chemistry issues potentially. But I have really nothing else to say about New York. I don't think there's anybody that's panicking about that team until we actually see them like legitimately crumble before our eyes. We'll never believe that those two are out of it. All right. Other team that was eliminated top 4, we've kind of already talked about them a decent amount. So it's the LA Thieves, but they outslayed Toronto in the series. And one thing I will say, I was left with nothing but positive thoughts about LA Thieves coming out of this weekend because we saw them obviously beat Paris. I believe they lost the control to Paris. And then against OpTic, they lost the control and they won the hard points. And then here against Toronto, they dominated them on the Bocage hard point, which is basically like the ego chow map where you just go gun skill versus gun skill. Then they lose the search and destroy. They win the control, and then they absolutely trolled and should have won that Tuscan hardpoint. So honestly, they should have went undefeated in hardpoint on the weekend, 6-0. Their main struggle seemed to be search and destroy when they played a top search team like Toronto. So honestly, that's my only concern about LA Thieves. I feel like they are going to fry in Respawn this year. I think they're going to be probably locked with Faze for sure, and then either like OpTic or Toronto. More than likely OpTic because they're always a top Respawn team. I feel like they're going to be battling with Toronto for that like third best or being a top 3 Respawn team. I think Thieves has potential to be the best, if not the second best Respawn team in the game based on what I saw. Just need them to bring it in search and destroy. I feel like my thoughts with Thieves leaving this tournament is if they can bring it in search, they have potential to be a top team that can win some events. I'm very, very optimistic about Thieves coming out of this weekend.
Yeah, LA Thieves came in to prove some early naysayers wrong. I kept messaging you about Draza, aka
he got himself into his own controversy.
One of my like 10 CDL sons that I'll reference to you or whatever. I was like, God, this guy looks good. But the whole team really looked good. Maybe you could say like Envoy needs to like have a little bit more consistency. But obviously in this series he led the entire lobby in slaying with 103 kills, but he did have 104 deaths.
Mm-hmm. Which is an encouraging sign, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's really getting in the mix and being that entry guy.
Right. And obviously we know Envoy is a very like cerebral player. Maybe to his detriment he'll overthink some things. But Yeah, I think this team is, they have so much upside. I just want to see them continue this consistency that we saw this week. Obviously, they played 3 matches, so they got a lot of LAN reps in. I think on the where I think it was on the wrap up flank. Zuma was saying like, oh, are we concerned that Octane is just like a LAN only player? Like obviously he's made all this like all these storylines about, online, this and that, and like we can't play online, we have to play on LAN. So hopefully they can translate these performances into online results in these qualifying matches coming up. Because obviously they're worth CDL points, and you have to win those to get good seeding in the majors, and we know the story. So yeah, hopefully this team translates well to online. I don't know if that's necessarily a storyline or something to look out for, but it did make me think a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm that's really my only concern is if they can translate to online, especially if they are playing out of LA in the compound, the Cash App compound for 100 Thieves there. Could be a little concerning that they may not be able to translate this, but I mean, I'm left with no concerns in terms of this team on LAN. I think they can compete with anybody and win a match at any time. Draza got himself involved in a little controversy with the smoke grenade and maybe using it a little bit of a cheesy way, but we'll talk about that maybe when we talk about some of the Vanguard stuff and how the game looked later. But we're on to our final 2 teams. We can just kind of talk about them in the same grouping because, to be honest, they finished top 2. So I don't know how much we have to say about them. I mean, Surge finishes second. To me, I don't know how you can have any other takeaway than you're more optimistic about Surge coming out of this weekend because we had no idea. We know Surge have always struggled in the past. We know they have a ton of question marks because this was Sib and Pred's first time in the Pro League. And we know Accuracy and Mac are good players, but we don't know if they are top players. So we had a lot of question marks about them. I mean, I'm obviously more optimistic about them coming out of this weekend than I was going into it because they looked great. I will say, after seeing them play this weekend, Pred is easily my favorite for Rookie of the Year. I think I picked Nasty in our like way too early predictions and stuff, but it seems like Seattle is poised to be arguably the team that's best that has a rookie. So it's looking like Pred has a very good chance. Although Sib was also very, very good this weekend, so maybe he could fight his own teammate for that. But I feel like Pred as a sub is going to make a lot more impactful plays, and that dude looks like he's the real deal. I can see why a lot of people were calling him the top challengers player and the top prospect coming out, and you can see why people have been saying Sib should have been in the league for the last few years because the dude looks disgusting. I mean, I don't know how you can say anything other than you're very, very hyped about Surge. And then on the side of Toronto, same thing. I mean, I still say they really should have lost to Thieves in that 3-1 in that semifinal, but they didn't, and they pulled it out, and they looked very good again. I mean, Cammy looks like an MVP again. Insight looks like he didn't lose a step. Kleenex still has his up and downs, but still has those maps where it's like, man, this guy's top SMG, one of the top guys in the game. And then Bance, he dropped a .99 in this final. He was Mr. Consistent. He's leading the team around the map. He looks very good again. I mean, Toronto, I think you have to be very, very optimistic about Surge, but still be a little cautious because just because we see a team make one run doesn't mean they're locked and loaded to be like top 4, like some people are saying. But I think we need to be more optimistic about Surge going into the year. And I mean, Toronto just proved us right that they're just bound to be a top 4 team again this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was the coming out party for Surge. Hopefully proving the naysayers wrong.
And hopefully they can keep the consistency.
Yeah, in regards to all 4 players, really, like a lot of people were not too bullish on Accuracy, not too bullish on Mac, and there was a lot of questions about Sib and Pred coming in. Obviously, an APAC Challengers player, not really playing up against the level of competition you might argue that the NA and EU Challengers scene brings. So, like, there was some questions about that, and then Sib has been considered one of the best AM players for a couple of years now, but just hadn't had a chance because he was on that in that Faze sub role. So obviously the Faze guys weren't going anywhere, so a lot of things to prove with Surge, and I think they did a really good job at making that happen this week. I'm very optimistic about them going forward, but at the same time, I've been hurt by Surge before with my boy Octane. So I want to see them, make a push to be a top 16, a top 8, top 6 team. They could just as easily fall away, I think, but I think this team is really poised to have a really good year. I just want them to capitalize on that. Obviously might push one of my other favorite teams out. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know. I'm really happy about Surge. When it comes to Ultra, I'm very, optimistic about them too. Obviously we saw them, it didn't seem like they lost a step when it comes to just dominance and winning and everything that's we've come to expect from Ultra in the last few years. I think, the tissue is an issue, as has been said before. Kleenex has been, he's all over the map. I think a lot of people were commenting, like, it just seemed like whenever somebody on Surge got a kill, Kleenex was there to trade them out and then maybe pop one more in the feed as well. He's just, it seems like, he's really got the handle of this game early. Cammy looks good as well. Insights prove. Sorry,
I was going to say about Kleenex is he's like the one guy to me, and I wanted to get this out there, is like he can rival Abezy's speed. I don't know if anybody else can really rival that pace that Abezy plays at, where it's like that blistering pace where it's like you spawn up and Abezy's in your face. It's like, God, this guy's got to be so annoying to play against. I think Kleenex is the one guy that can actually rival that speed. And like you said about Cammy, it seemed like, oh no, Ultra's losing this lead a little bit here. What's going to happen? Cammy pops 3-piece. Like, it was just like last year. They picked up right where they left off. Like you said, Kleenex is playing at a pace that maybe only Abezy can play at along with him. And Cammy, when they need a 2 or a 3-piece and need some kills that don't get traded out, oh, here comes Cammy, 2 in the feed. Oh, here's 3 in the feed. And you never know. Oh, he spawn killed 2 more. Like, those 2 picked up right where they left off. They're scary.
Yeah. And like I said, this team hasn't lost a step. I just think this team is poised. Ultra are poised to have a really good year and play spoiler to a lot of these other teams that were looking to have, a championship caliber season, because obviously there's only 4 majors and then champs, and it seems like Ultra is probably slotted in to, make a really good push at all 4 of these majors. I just don't see a world where they're going to fall off super hard. And, good for them. I think it's great for, great for them, obviously, great for EU to have a team that's, this good. Yeah, they're going to be dangerous all year.
Oh yeah, they're 100% always. I unless something crazy happens, every time we go into a major this year, there's going to be no way you can write off Toronto as a team that could potentially come out on top of that major or come out as a top 3 team from the major. There's no way you're ever going to be able to write them out. They're always going to be in contention. And even if they come into a tournament maybe as like your 4th team or something, you're always going to know that like it's not impossible that Toronto can come out and win this thing. That's pretty much all of our reactions for big takeaways for each team. I think that was pretty fun and good to get into because, there's just so much to unpack with the first time we see every team. There's so much to talk about. We went pretty long with that segment, but that's how it's going to be for the first time. It's probably going to be shortened up in the future following other majors, but this is the first time we get to see every team, so we had a lot of thoughts to get out on them. Next thing we wanted to do was our power rankings, kind of just list them down from 12 to 1. Usually we're going to do more with our power rankings and talk about them a little more, but we both agreed that like power rankings right now, like I felt like I kind of knew who my top 6 were, but then from 7 to like 11, I literally felt like you could almost order it any way you wanted and I wouldn't argue with you. So we're just going to kind of list our power rankings. Maybe if there's something glaring that we disagree on, we'll discuss it, but just going to list our power rankings and we'll get more into them in the future. So if you want to list yours from bottom to top, then I can go ahead and list mine after.
Yeah, so at 12 I have Paris. Like we said, I think that they're gonna, be a little bit better than maybe 12 would say. But nonetheless, the team has to be in 12. 11 I have London Royal Ravens. 10 I have LAG. They fell quite a bit from my original power ranking. I just think this is where they're at right now. 9, I have Boston Breach. A little bullish on them going into the week, but I don't think that they really, are much more deserving of any spot higher. 8, I have Rocker. Fell off a little bit from where I had them initially, but I think their upside is still there. 7, I have Florida, right along there with Rocker. Biggest jump I have is 6 being Surge. I think that they really showed a lot of promise, but there's just so many teams that are so many teams that are better than them, and that really says a lot about where the league is right now. 5, I have Los Angeles Thieves. Really good showing this weekend. Made me get a little bit more confidence in this team. I hope that they can transition and the promise they showed this weekend into results going forward on online and on LAN. 4, I have NYSL. I think I had NYSL at 4 to begin with, so they remain unmoved. Solid performance this weekend. 3, I have OpTic. I think I had OpTic at 2, so they fell one spot. But yeah, I mean, like we said, no reason to sound the alarm on OpTic. I think that they're still really well poised. Now this is where it might get a little controversial. Number 2, I have Faze.
Oh my god.
Maybe I'm a little bit maybe I'm too bullish on Ultra, but number 1 right now has got to be Toronto Ultra. They won the kickoff. They didn't put a foot wrong. Besides maybe they got away with that. They got away with one maybe once or twice there, but I don't know. But when it comes to Faze Ultra right now, I think it's really like a 1A, 1B deal.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Not to say that it can't revert back to Phase 1. But I'll stick to my guns. I'll be a little bit controversial because I know you're gonna keep Phase at 1, so I'll toss it over to you.
I definitely did keep Faze at 1. I just still think if I put a piece of paper in front of you that had the bracket on it and it was Faze versus Ultra in the finals, I still, even though you just put Toronto 1, I still think you'd take Faze in a matchup in a finals over Toronto.
That's a really good point. So, be that as it may, I'd probably still pick Faze any way you cut it. I don't know, but maybe I'm seeing this more of like, when they do like a football power index or something. Maybe I just think that Ultra is a little bit more powerful right now, but Faze definitely, like, they might be like that stalwart team. So yeah, so maybe I'm contradicting myself. I don't know, but you can let me know how how bad I am with my 1 versus 2 pick. I don't think that's the most.
No,
It's not like I'm dropping Faze to like 4 or 5 or anything.
No.
It's like, come on, people. Like,
I also will say with the power rankings, just because you have it in order doesn't mean that like you think 1 is unbeatable, 2 cannot be beat by anybody else but 1. Like that's one thing I was gonna say. Mentioning my power rankings, like there are teams I have at like 10 and 11 who I very easily think could beat 9, 8, 7, 6. I think they could beat all those teams on the right day and in the right series, but they're just the teams that you'd favor in that series. I mean, we're at the point of the year where this is our first power rankings, and some of the teams we saw play 3 maps. Like, it is so hard to rank them, but that's why, like I mentioned to you before, I felt like I knew who I wanted in my top 6 in a relative order I think they should go in, but I literally think you can swap 7 through 10 in any order you want, and it'd be fine. So what I did, we agreed on 12 and 11. I had Paris at 12, London at 11. Obviously, I started with them at like 7 or 8 because I wanted to be bold, but that was where we thought they're going to finish for the regular season. This isn't necessarily a list of where I think teams are going to finish for the regular season. I also wanted to make that disclaimer, and probably a disclaimer for your list as well. This is not where we think teams are going to finish. This is where we're ranking them right now. If maybe we were like going into a tournament or something. So I have Paris still at 12. I dropped London to 11 in the power rankings because I do think right now you can't rely on them, but I do think they are going to find a way to climb their way up in the power rankings. I actually have Florida at 10. I know that they did win a match, but I'm still a little bit cautious about this team because I did see a lot of red flags for them in the fact that they did kind of get fried against Ultra, And I have some optimism about them, but I think they're a more consistent team than London. But I still think that their ceiling is relatively low at 10. I put LAG at 9. I'm very disappointed to have them down at 9 because I think they're a team that has, at their absolute peak with the players in their team, I think they are a team that has potential to finish towards the top 3 in a tournament, maybe even get a tournament win. I think that they have that much potential, but right now they're just not looking like they can fulfill it. So I have them at 9. I have your boys in Minnesota at 8. I still feel like some people might have them as low as like 10 right now in that Florida spot because of how poor their performance was this weekend. But like you said, they're going to be a team that's almost impossible to count out and search and destroy, and that's going to keep them in series as long as they can figure out their respawn and not start too slow. I think they're still a pretty solid team. I got Boston at 7. This is maybe a little high for some people, but I was really encouraged by what I saw. And Power Rankings is kind of a projection of where you think your confidence is in teams going into the future. So I got them at 7. I have Surge at 6. I believe we agreed on this one. I really wanted to move them up because I think a lot of people had them at 10 or lower on their Power Rankings before we heard about all the news coming in from like the Scrimtel and stuff. But I have them at 6 now. I really want to move them up, but I think it's quite an overreaction to put them ahead of your OpTic, your Faze, your Thieves even. So I got them at 6. I have New York at 5. I think I had them at 3 or 4 to start the year, so it's not too much of a difference. I still think they're a solid team. I actually moved LA Thieves all the way up to 4, which is probably my biggest jump. They really impressed me this weekend. I am really, really, really in on Thieves. 3, I have OpTic. I dropped them down a spot, but it's pretty hard to not put Toronto and Faze above them after this weekend because, I mean, them and Faze both lost in the same round, but I mean, you're not going to put OpTic ahead of Faze after they both lost their first match. And then Toronto, I don't see how they can't at least jump into that 2 spot because they did win the event. And then I still have Faze at 1 because, like I said, when I was thinking about it, I was like, do I put Toronto at 1 since they won? And then I actually thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? If it was a grand final tomorrow, Faze was playing Ultra, I'm still taking Faze until I see them not be the kings of the league. So that was my list. We were overall pretty similar. We kind of had maybe a swap and a spot or two, but it's very hard to put a power rankings together and feel 100% confident in it right now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not gonna fight you on obviously the 2v1. We kind of discussed that, but kind of surprised you dropped subliners that to 5. That was a little bit surprising for me. I know you were pretty bullish in our initial power rankings on having them at 3.
Yeah,
that was, I mean, out of all of them, that was probably my biggest shocker. Yeah.
I guess, yeah. I mean, my biggest reasoning behind it is I feel like this weekend I saw a higher ceiling from Faze, or not from Faze, obviously from Faze, but from LA Thieves. So I, as of right now, at least, I still think that the consistency from New York might be more steady, but I feel like I saw a higher ceiling from Thieves, and I still just believe in general that OpTic has the higher ceiling. I mean, I know I had subliners at 4 or at 3 in my initial. I had Faze and then OpTic, then subliners, and then Toronto. So I mean, LA Thieves was also below them. I felt like LA Thieves showed me more potential this weekend, so I moved them up. I kept OpTic ahead of them, and then I felt like I had to jump Toronto ahead of them. So I felt like the only way I could have had them is at 4 at the highest. So I feel like LA Thieves showed me a little more potential. So I wanted to give them a nod and show that I have maybe a little bit more confidence, at least in the short term, for them. All right, you ready to move on into some of our Vanguard looks and impressions from this first set of matches?
Yeah.
This is really like our last topic we have to get into. I know this episode's running pretty long already. We're around an hour and a half, so this will really be the last thing we get into. But it's obviously something we really wanted to talk about because this was our first kind of bulk sample size of watching Vanguard play competitively. And the first thing we want to talk about is maybe the big controversy from the weekend. I don't really want to get too much into the Draza and Simp argument. It was pretty funny. They started getting into Cellium snaking, and Kenny was defending his teammate and stuff. But I will say I was a lot more excited to watch Search and Destroy those snipers in, and I think it was proven this weekend that they're not OP. I mean, there were a lot of hit markers. It seemed like everybody was getting hit markers besides Cammy. He was just one-shotting everyone. But it seemed like there was enough hit markers to go around. People were missing some shots. They were whiffing. The snipers were sometimes costing because they'd miss a shot, get pushed, and die. Like, there were plenty of counters to the snipers, and people weren't even using their smokes properly, which is one thing I have saved here on the side when Octane says it. He said, just my opinion. Maybe I'm hammered, but smokes and snipers do not correlate at all. The amount of times smokes were used to, in air quotes, counter a sniper, and how often they're used otherwise aren't even close, which I fully agreed with. I saw nobody smoking across or smoking out a sniper to get out of his point of view or his line of sight and get away from him and finesse their way around the map. They didn't use smokes at all that way, and snipers still weren't just taking over maps. So I thought it was super fun to watch snipers, and it brings that new element. I believe it was on the OpTic pre-show they were talking about who's a sniper for every team. It just provides this whole different element to teams that makes it more in depth to analyze a team. When you look at a team and you're yo, Faze has Simp to snipe, OpTic has Dashy, Toronto has Cammy, and you go through and then you're Paris, they have John, he's pretty good. And then you look at maybe some other teams, we didn't know who the heck was going to be Seattle sniper. It's does Seattle have a sniper? Well, that could be a weak point of them in search. It's interesting to know some teams might have a weak point because they don't have an elite sniper, or some teams have an elite sniper and you have more confidence. It just adds that depth to the league that makes it a lot more interesting. And I feel like we saw this weekend that snipers belong because they weren't completely terrible and they definitely weren't OP. So I was pretty happy to watch them in the game.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of at least from what the stream was showing, it looked like a lot of somewhat questionable snipes. Maybe the aim assist was dragging the crosshairs just that extra little bit. But Octane was hitting some good snipes on Desert Siege. He had a couple he had a 2-piece, and I was screaming at my at my computer. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I can't believe we were deprived of this for a year. Just of seeing somebody scoping, and it makes you pay that much more attention to S&D. And if teams will, the good search and destroy teams will learn both how to play with snipers and how to counter them. And whether some teams decide to abandon a sniper on a map and go with an extra AR and be a little bit more aggro on the map or something. I don't know how to play search and destroy like the pros. That's why I watch, that's why I watch the CDL, and that's why it's so exciting to see sniper play. And I agree with your point on Octane's point on Twitter with I didn't see people using smokes to counter the lines of sight and to, get better map positioning and stuff. So you can't really say that, both of them should be GA'd. I just think that's silly and would definitely lose a lot of my interest in the game mode if they're just oh, snipers are gone, so we have to watch another automaton on the map or something like that. That doesn't do it for me. And I think giving us the snipers in kickoff was a great move, and I hope that they continue.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing I will say is there's nothing like when you load into a search and destroy round as a spectator and they start on the sniper and he's pre-aimed and you hear you see a guy that's near his scope and he's maybe going to peek and he's getting close to peeking and the crowd just goes the crowd, you can just hear kind of come over the crowd and everybody's getting excited and he hits the shot and they explode. It's when else nobody's doing that for when Abezy runs and gets a first blood, or when somebody's pre-aimed with an AR and they hit a couple shots and they kill somebody. There's nothing that brings that excitement like a pick for a first blood or a crazy 2-piece. You never hear a crowd go that crazy for search and destroy unless it's a round 11 kill or a kill and a 1v1 crucial 4-4 or something. You don't hear people go that crazy for a random first blood in the second round of the game as you do when somebody gets a snipe. And here's a history lesson for you. I know you maybe haven't watched too many COD Ghost matches, or any of you out there, if you never watched this clip, this is a clip that just brings the excitement of snipers. Go look up a clip. I believe it was Karma on Sovereign, Search and Destroy, and Ghosts. I believe he's the one using the sniper. He's in the back spawn top balcony and he's pre-aiming a doorway. And there's a guy in that doorway. And obviously through the X-ray vision from the casters, you can see he's there. And Karma is pre-aiming this door for a good 20 seconds. And the guy keeps inching closer and closer. And the crowd's just oohing on the whole time. And they're oh, and every time he gets close to the door, they're getting more hyped. And the guy keeps shouldering and he won't fully peek. And Karma just sits there and pre-aims it. Eventually he peeks, Karma hits him, and the crowd just goes absolutely insane. There is no other weapon or anything that brings that kind of excitement to a mode that's as slow as Search and Destroy is sometimes, and quite frankly can be boring for a viewer who really isn't super invested in the Search and Destroy game. So snipers bring that excitement. So any of you that haven't seen that clip, go look that up. Karma on Sovereign Search and Destroy in COD Ghosts. One of the best sniping clips of all time. It's just fun to watch and listen to the crowd. But next thing we want to talk about in Vanguard, kill streaks and Fortified being absolutely busted. I don't know that I want to say too much about this one. I feel like everybody kind of knows based on this weekend that Fortified is broken. I mean, you drop a glide bomb, which takes 7 kills to get right on somebody's head, and if they have Fortified, they just live basically unfazed. So that's absolutely insane. Obviously, if you drop a glide bomb on somebody, no matter what perks they have on, they should die if they're out in the open. So that really doesn't make any sense how that's a thing. But kill streaks overall kind of underwhelming in this game. That strafing run is not great and can honestly be detrimental. It can team kill pretty easily if you put it in the wrong spot. The glide bomb obviously can be an okay streak if Fortified isn't a thing, but I mean, if players have Fortified on, the glide bomb's useless. I don't mind it this way though, as long as they just nerf Fortified where you do die to glide bombs. I think the streaks are pretty solid. They can have an impact if used correctly, but they also aren't super OP. I don't know if we'll ever hit a great balance like we did with score streaks in like Black Ops 4, where they were just perfect, where they had a very big impact when used right, but they still weren't OP. That'll never happen in this game since really the only good typical streak is the glide bomb. But I would like to see Fortified nerfed a little bit in terms of the glide bomb damage you take. And if that's able to get kills when you hit somebody with it, I feel like streaks are not in a bad spot.
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy watching the strafing run. I just thought it was like so hit or miss. Obviously, glide bomb needs to be fixed with Fortified. It needs to have obviously a direct hit kill, but also probably a decent radius kill as well. I think if you get a 7 kill streak, you probably deserve to kill at least one player on the map, unless they're all inside or something. It just looks silly when you have like a guy like Major Maniac on that Bocage hardpoint. Like he went on a streak, and then I think he literally dropped the glide bomb like right on somebody's head, and it still didn't kill him. And I was like, yeah, this is just silly. And that's when I messaged you. I was like, this thing needs to go.
It wasn't like that like a short time ago though. They like just made that change to Fortified.
Right.
When I was playing GBs, it would kill just fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just like, obviously to us it seems like it's a quick fix, but obviously the developers like to make everything seem like it's like asking them to reinvent the wheel.
We still didn't have Silent Plant Diffuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, that's totally like a whatever thing, but like obviously streaks add that added wrinkle into the game where you can break a hill with a streak or do anything like elim some players with a streak. But this, at least like in this opening event, it just seemed like you were wasting your presence on the map to call in a streak for like 5 or 6 seconds when you could have like killed and died and respawned in that exact same time. So it almost seemed like teams were playing a player down for the time that the streak was being used, which shouldn't be the case.
No, absolutely not. Especially when you call in that glide bomb, as long as everybody's using the Fortified, they're just not going to die. Really, the only thing you can use it for now is to push people inside and take control of a lane while they can't see it, which is obviously part of the way streaks are intended to be used, but they also should be able to get a kill if you drop it directly on someone. All right. Last thing maybe for Vanguard we have to talk about in terms of how the game looked was the maps, maybe or kind of a lack thereof. I'll say like overall, like Bocage is kind of a terrible map and it's not that good to play, but it's kind of fun to watch because it's basically just an ego chow fest of which pros can look the best and dominate with their gun skill, which is pretty interesting, at least for the viewer. It's honestly overall in terms of fundamental Call of Duty, pretty terrible to watch, but what were your thoughts on the maps?
Yeah, I don't know. I just like, I don't think it's ever a problem when there's too many maps or like an abundance, but it just seemed like we were watching the same maps every series. And at least with the last like 2 iterations of the title, like you could have some variety. Like you could like obviously teams would have their hard vetoes and stuff, but then like there was still a map or two where, it might be different. Like I don't know, I'm not gonna go into like the specifics of the last two titles, but like, like you could have your veto and then you could still have like two different maps be played for uh your third game mode, or you could have there was an abundance of search maps to pick from, so like you might have one map show up like a couple times in a row and then you might not see it for a couple matches or something. So I'm just worried that we might get burnt out on this map set. And hopefully the developers have plans to introduce some more, at least any maps at this point, even if they're, even if the pros have to play them and find out if they're competitively viable or not. But it seems like they've already gone through the map set right now and they've picked out what they want to play, or the developers have picked out, or the CDLs picked out. But I just hope that we get at least the option to play more maps. Yeah, so I mean, I agree that Bocage was fun to watch, but it wasn't. I don't want to see it every single series in that regard. And like the same with like Gavudu, it's like I don't want to see that every series. It was kind of like, why do I want to watch like 4 automatons? Potentially 4 automatons, and like Berlin seems to be the most versatile map, but like, do I want to see that every single series? Maybe Berlin can take a back seat for a series, and Desert Siege seemed to be okay for search. Like obviously the sniping lanes are fun, but like maybe we add another map with sniping lanes just so we're not staring at the same map for an entire game cycle. I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I definitely can see all that. I will agree 100% that we need some more maps to be added in, because I mean, obviously in Control 2 maps is not enough. That gets still really old, like really, really fast. Especially, I feel like Tuscan will become the preferred map. So Gavutu will be almost vetoed all the time, and we'll just see Tuscan control every series, which we need more maps for that, because that'll get boring really fast. But I agree, Berlin is definitely the most versatile. It's my favorite to play. I think it's the best search and destroy map, and I've actually started, as I started to play more Respawn, I am starting to enjoy Berlin Hardpoint almost more than any of the maps. I do think it's probably the best map in the game right now, which I didn't expect to say, because I really thought that was going to be Tuscan, but Tuscan's bomb sites and search and destroy are so one-sided, you pretty much have to go towards that A site. It's almost impossible, since it's just like Garrison. There's like one lane to get to B, so it's a lot tougher. But yeah, we definitely need more maps, more versatility, because like you said, it's going to get very old and boring to continue to watch the same map over and over again. But you got anything else to go into before we get into Down Bad Sports of the Week and kind of wrap this pod up?
No, I guess just one last like fleeting piece that I had mentioned here is like that only half the teams have announced their substitute player. So like I'm like, where do we stand on like, are subs required, or like do they still have time to announce them? Just a thought. Like, not that I'm like a huge like substitute player stan, kind of weird, but like I don't know, like it seems like not even like OpTic hasn't even announced theirs yet, and yeah, I don't know, just like where do we stand on that? Just something to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, it's very odd, because I mean, I remember like going back to Modern Warfare when it was 5v5, every team was required to have at least 2 subs, and some teams didn't really take that seriously. Like you had Huntsman, they signed General as a sub, then they had like Bows, and like people that weren't even like in the question to even like play or sub in for a match as subs. And then like last year, I believe you were required to have 1, and some teams still just use their coach as the sub. And now this year, like you said, only half of them have subs announced, and we don't even know anymore if it's required, because we've gotten no information. So it is a very odd situation that we'll have to look at going into the year, because they really technically, if you have to have them signed by the start of the season, they only have like a week to do so. So we might see a lot of sub announcements if they're still required to have one coming up this week. But time for Down Bad Sports of the Week. To be honest, this might sound weird, but mine was the fact that the NFL weekend ended, because that was like maybe one of the greatest weekends of NFL football I've ever seen. The Packer game was kind of boring, because it was just a low scoring, just ugly game. But like the Bengals Titans game brought me so much joy, because I mean the Titans fans were just ridiculously loud, and about how good they were, and they got the 1 seed. And just like they always do, they are now 0-3 as a 1 seed. They've never won a game as a 1 seed. Every time they get it, they instantly lose their first game because they are a terrible franchise and will never win a ring. And I was happy to see Joe Burrow win because I kind of like Joe Burrow. He's kind of swaggy. He's obviously a good quarterback, and he, I mean, he just is an exciting player. And that offense is electric. Jamar Chase is the real deal. I really like T. Higgins too. Even Tyler Boyd's a pretty good receiver. Joe Mixon's a solid running back. Like that offense is high powered and they're fun to watch. They didn't really score a lot this week, but I'm excited to keep watching them. Then you move on to the Packer game that night. Like I said, kind of boring. Go on to the next day, and that Buccaneers-Rams game was pretty terrible for a lot of the game. And out of nowhere, Tom Brady did his Tom Brady thing and almost worked some witchcraft and won them the game. And then your boy Matt Stafford clutched up, and they won. And then the final game, that Bills Chiefs game, was maybe arguably up there as like the best game of football I've ever seen. That game was insane. They scored like 25 points in the final minute and 50 seconds. And my cousin is like the biggest Bills fan on earth. So I've never seen somebody so hyped and then literally 10 minutes later so down bad at the result of a game.
So he was hype, down bad, and then hype again, and then down bad again, right?
Yeah. It was the biggest roller coaster you can ever see. Like he's like the biggest Bills fan. I don't even know if there's a bigger Bills fan on earth than him though, and he was down bad. So that was kind of interesting to watch during the game. But yeah, I was just sad that weekend of football ended because I don't know if we'll ever see a weekend of football that good again. Like that was absurd. And also, obviously, you guys know I'm from Wisconsin, and the amount of Packer fans that talked trash about my team after they choked and didn't make the playoffs, it was just funny to just see them all today. And I didn't have to say a word. I just had to smile, and it was just like, I mean, what are you going to say? I mean, all I heard all year living in Wisconsin was how good the Packers were, and this was the year. And they did the same thing they do every time. They just were a favorite, and they blew it again. So I'm sure as a Lions fan, that also kind of gave you a little satisfaction to watch the Packers lose. But yeah, that was my down bad moment. I was just sad the weekend of football had to end.
Yeah, that's I also, with the amount of bad games that happened last weekend, I think this past weekend, the games were just so good that it was just such a stark contrast. Like usually we say like the more games the better, but then really this weekend was just incredible. My down bad moment is the infighting within there's 2 camps in the Detroit Lions fandom right now. They're the ones that are Matt Stafford stans, and we're really happy to see him spread his wings and fly off to the LA Rams, who have completely sold the farm to win a ring this year. I think that they've totally decimated their franchise going forward by selling off draft capital. They've spent a lot of money on contracts as well. But hey, if you can win a ring one year and take like 4 to 5 years of rebuilding and getting out from bad money contracts and stuff, I think you take that deal every single day. But there's also the camp of Lions fans who are that have animosity towards Matt Stafford for a whole host of reasons, for not winning a playoff game. There was a year where all they had to do was win one of the final 3 games, and they failed to do that, and that was to win the division. And he spent a decade of his career here, where the Lions, they could have been a halfway decent team, and they just never lived up to it. And obviously, the quarterback will usually always take the brunt of the blame on stuff like that. So his move to the Rams has caused a lot of infighting within the Lions fandom, like I said, and I think it weakens our fan base as a whole. It makes us look dumb and childish to have people on our local sports talk radio, taking up entire segments of the program to be, standing for Matt Stafford, or selling him down the river like he's a traitorous like piece of POS. And it really says a lot about the state of the franchise when a player moves 2,000 miles away, and that story is the one that's dominating the local sports talk. So it's more of an indictment on Detroit sports as a whole, but more so the Lions, and really the state of the fan base. And as much as I hate it, I've taken up arms on the side of, I don't really see Matt Stafford's success in LA being, oh, it's a direct attribute to his time as a Lion, and therefore we should all be, groveling on the floor, begging for forgiveness for wasting Matt Stafford. Like, he had Calvin Johnson, he had opportunities to have a good team. And yes, the franchise did fail at the end of the day to put a winning football team around him. But he put up Hall of Fame numbers in Detroit. I don't think that him magically moving to LA makes him like a national superstar now. Obviously he's only won 2 playoff games in his career, and those have been the 2 playoff games that he's played this year. And he's, even without winning a single playoff game, he's still going to be a Hall of Famer just based on statistics and numbers alone. So my down bad thing is, like, let's stop the fighting about Matthew Stafford. Yes, he was our franchise quarterback for a decade. Yes, he's moved on. I don't think it needs to tear our fan base apart, and I'm sad to see that.
Yeah, I saw you talk about it on Twitter a little bit, and I kind of saw this firsthand because my sister's a big Lions fan, and she is like one of the people that's like kind of cheering for him, but not like some of the people that I've seen like screaming. She's just like, "Oh, Stafford's doing well. That's kind of cool to see," because was always a big Stafford fan. So like, yeah, it is kind of weird how it can tear apart a fan base like that. Because usually when you see a guy leave, a lot of fan bases are like, "Screw that guy," and they don't like him. But it's kind of an interesting situation. With Stafford to watch how much fighting is actually going on, because I've never seen a player that was traded away from a team and kind of everybody accepted that he was traded cause so much controversy, that fan base.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you have a team that hasn't won, jack shit, pardon my French, it's always gonna, maybe if the Lions had won and then he moved, people would be like, oh, screw him, he's gone, we don't need him anymore. But a lot of Lions fans are like, oh, we need him back, this whole like Stockholm syndrome of like, oh my gosh, he was the best thing that ever happened to us. And yes, he is a very good football player, and he was a very good, member of this community. He did a lot of good charitable stuff around the community for Detroit. A very outspoken wife on social media as well. I know she's had her fair share of run-ins with fans throwing pretzels and stuff. But I don't know. It's too bad that he's gone, but at the same time, good on him for finding success. But I don't think it needs to be like, the Lions fans don't necessarily need to be like all like, I'm gonna say something really bad, and I'm not gonna say it, but blank riding him to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
I see
that's just my thoughts.
I see both sides of it. I see wanting to cheer for your former player, but I also see like get over it. Like, we all don't need to like love him.
Right.
I see both sides of it. All right.
All right. That's
Ready
it.
to wrap this
That's it
up?
for me. I'm done.
So I just want to thank you guys all once again, all of you listening right now that tuned into the last podcast and dropped a comment and dropped a like on it, or just listen to it in general, because man, the support, like we said at the beginning of this episode, was absolutely crazy. You guys put up some numbers on that podcast that we've never seen before. It was nuts. We're hoping to continue that momentum heading into the CDL year. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. Check us out on the audio platforms as well. If you want a different way to listen, like I said, that support was absolutely absurd. So we really appreciate that. Comment down below your thoughts on the Kickoff Classic. Do you think we were a little low on Seattle, ranking them only 6 in our power rankings? Is there another team that you're really excited about that maybe we didn't give the love they deserve? Just comment down below your thoughts on the Kickoff Classic, because there was a lot to unpack. Maybe we missed a point that you wanted to get into, but that's going to do it for this one. We'll be back next week with some more talk about news and the CDL heading into the season, and then we get right into the matches the following podcast after that. So please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, everyone.